Hopefulness, day 7. You know, weather is a weird thing. I mean, I've been learning about weather most of my life, and not just because, what is it, small talk and all that stuff. But I used to watch the weather. I used to watch the news with my parents and my grandmother when I was younger. And then also, I think because of that, and because I always looked to watch the local weatherman, Troy Dungan, on WFAA, Channel 8, Dallas. I think when I don't know why my grandmother decided to give me a book for my sister's birth. Like, why give somebody's, I don't know. But I mean, I kind of get it, because it's like, especially as a kid, you're like, hey, I want my, I want to feel special too. I don't know. But anyway, the reason I was even mentioning it is because, like, last week it was getting to the point where it's like really warm, and wearing this outfit was just kind of uncomfortable. And then now this week it's like, okay, back to normal. And then, of course, over on the East Coast, or on the east side of the U.S., everything is going crazy. Dallas, or Texas, rather, it's on its own little, we don't need nobody else's power grid. We'll do our own, and everything goes to shit. So 2 years in a row, they've proven that no, of course, they're decentral, or they're, I don't even remember what the hell it was. I think it was decentralized. It's been a long time since they made the changes that they did when it came to power. Deregulated. I think that was the word I was looking for. It's been a while since they deregulated it to where, it's more about, being privatized. And lo and behold, it's going to shit. Who'd have thunk it? It's funny how often this happens. Nobody would have guessed. Not a single person. No one never would have understood this to have happened. Fortunately, my sister's in a position where she's fine, so that's cool. Fuck. Anyway. And I mean, I know this isn't freezing weather over here, but I got my own issues I'm working on. But anyway, so I've been interested in the weather, and I think it's just because when I lived in the Dallas area, weather was often so frequently chaotic. It was so unpredictable that even as a kid, I was interested in understanding it. And I guess my grandmother picked up on that or something, I'm not sure. But, so she got me that weather book, and I mean, I read the shit out of that thing. I read it front to back constantly, because it was really interesting. That was like my only real source of weather-related knowledge other than the meteorologists on the news. And, for all of its downfalls, Dallas had one thing going for it, and that was Channel 8, the WFAA ABC News. That was what we watched, and interestingly enough, despite my family being who they were, it was a pretty diverse crew of people. I mean, there was a black man on as an anchor, and this was in the 80s and 90s. And then you had, minority women as well, and so it wasn't just a bunch of white people. And I'm sure that had a positive influence on me in some way. Again, despite some of the issues that my family still had anyway, despite, it's like despite the fact that this was a thing that we regularly watched, somehow they were still as racist as they were. And I was too, in so many ways. But over time, things change. Sometimes. Sometimes people change, sometimes they don't. For better or worse. Till death do us part, no. Or possibly, I don't know. But, so yeah, it was, that was a thing. Got the book. And then, throughout the years, after the fact, a lot of the other evening meteorologists, they were all really informative, really intelligent. I really liked what they were, in fact, I would say that book, my influence from Troy Dungan and the other meteorologists, were the reason why I had even heavily considered going into meteorology as it was. Like in my 20s, I was pretty dead set on the idea. And then that idea died when I went to the Military Entry Processing Station, aka MEPS, on my 23rd birthday, because I got disqualified from like 99% of the jobs because of my color blindness. And that was the first time I had even known that I had color vision issues, which sucked, because I got like a 97 on the ASVAB out of 100, which was surprising because I didn't even know. I guessed at like half the stuff. But I mean, I've always been like that with tests for the most part. I can usually pass the test. Even, go with look at was a driving test that I just took. I didn't drive the way that I drive when I was in that driving test. The only thing I screwed up was just kind of taking too wide of turns for the most part. But otherwise, I was Mr. Obedient. I was like, I'm not gonna screw anything up. I'm gonna do exactly as you say. Left, okay, left, we're going left. Stop right here or ready. Do whatever it is, but and so having that experience of, oh hey, you're, get smoky here. Having that experience of there's all these possibilities, and then moments later the rug gets pulled out from under you, really sucks. And so it's like, well, a little bit of char on here that I don't want, but that's whatever. Can't change it. And so pretty much every notion that I had wherein that I wanted to become a meteorologist just was tossed out the fucking window. Which was a big bummer, because it still is in so many ways a thing that I understand, I think about now. And one of the things about it was, or I would say one of the things about it that you could say is important in my education overall is that it was, for all intents and purposes, my introduction into earth sciences. But beyond that as well, not just earth sciences, but things like astronomy and everything, physics, chemistry, etc. Living in Texas as a youth and having knowledgeable and passionate presenters of the weather helped lead me down that road. And also having that book from my grandmother, I'm sure, has helped, because then it reestablished, reinforced that that knowledge and desire for understanding. And even when I was a kid, I wish I even knew what this series was, but there was this book series, really thin hardcover, almost like a science only but illustrated encyclopedia. And I only had the first book, and the first book was still really fascinating. And it had the one thing that I remember more than anything that I continually read up on was the atomic bomb. Now, it wasn't something illegal or anything like that. It was a published book. It was just providing visual information about how a fission bomb works, and chain reactions and everything. And the illustrations were great. And I kind of wish I could find maybe an online version of that or something, but that's who I was as a kid. I was, and fortunately, despite my parents not being great people, stop clock is right twice a day, and occasionally they would get some stuff right. I had the aptitude, and I would say to a degree I still do, but not to any kind of degree that is significant, it seems. To grow up to be some kind of scientist. I've always been a critical thinker. I may not have always been the critical thinker that I needed to be, and I don't always have necessarily the right questions to ask, especially in the face of just shitty attitudes. But even when situations like that occurred, I would still occasionally be that critical thinker, and I would have an attitude about it too, because obviously the attitude was being thrust at me. I would question my parents. I would question their not their morality, but their rightness and their wrongness. I would question their accuracy, and they didn't like that at all. I mean, again, I think I mentioned this in another video, that the fact that when Deep Space Nine hadn't even come out yet, and there was a teaser for it, I knew it was a television show. My stepdad thought it was a movie. We were on our way to Red Lobster. I think we were in the Red Lobster parking lot. We had been in an argument about it, and me being the argumentative person that I am, I wouldn't let up. And at one point, he smacks me in the back of the fucking head, just right in that spot. And it's like, the fuck? I can only wonder what would happen. What would have happened, rather, in my life had my parents been more attentive to my needs beyond just the basic needs, and were the type of people that, when proven wrong, accepted it and then tried to have a discussion about how to go about something like that. I mean, there's no way to know, of course, but what if? Who the hell knows what I'd be doing? I may have learned, because one of the things, and I didn't really truly understand, and I probably still don't truly understand any of it, about the way that my parents behaved, was that, obviously, the way that they act towards you will often be how you act towards you, or how you act and how you respond to certain things. Well, I'm easily discouraged because I was often discouraged from doing anything. I at one point I wanted to be an architect because I wasn't a good artist. It didn't make sense to be an artist because my skill, my understanding, even now, I can't be an artist. And it's not a logical step to take either, because when it comes to finances and stuff, good luck making a lot of money or making enough money, really, when you're an artist. But when I was able to piece together my own things, my own creations, if you will, and the stuff that I regularly drew, I used to draw like houses and mazes all the time, and that was where I got the idea of being an architect. And I had mentioned it at one point to my mother, and she was like, well, it's going to be really hard because you have to do all kinds of engineering. And somehow, I think she didn't, and because this was always the case, she had apparently attempted it and it was too hard for her or something like that, I'm not sure. And so instead of encouraging me and saying, there's going to be a lot of work ahead of you, but I think you could do this, it was, nah, you probably shouldn't do that. And so I didn't. And so I learned, that if there was any kind of effort to be put into it, I probably wasn't going to do it. And B, to not tell her what I wanted to do. But then, I stopped wanting to do. But because I was so reliant upon her, and I needed her approval and all that stuff, I would still seek her out for advice on things. There was even a point where I sent her an email some years ago, like 15 years ago, something like that. Still lost in my late 20s, trying to figure out what my next step could be. And she gives me this list of stuff, and it doesn't feel like she even knows what the hell she's talking about. And I'm like, who are you talking to? You know? And it's like, sure, some of them I've pursued in some respect or another. But I think at one point she mentioned tattoo artist. I'm not a fucking artist. And doing it on skin, what the hell? And I mean, obviously, nobody knows what the hell we're doing. Like, let's just put that out there. The average person doesn't know what the fuck we're doing in life. We're all just kind of hoping things work out. And the worse things get, the more uncertain things are, and the less likely we're able to do anything. And I mean, obviously, she's a human, and that would be a situation for her as well. So I'm trying to figure this shit out myself. And, you know, yeah, I get some input here and there from some people, but I'm not good at taking criticism, and especially or criticism or advice or compliments. I'm bad at it all. It's like, people tell me that I'm good at editing and stuff, and I'm like, really? Because I don't think I am. Not compared to people, not compared to what I've seen that exists. And I've seen what it is, and I've seen the basis of the effort that it's taken, and I don't know if I could put the effort into it. I have a hard enough time putting in the effort for some of the stuff that I do that's almost no effort. So that's why it's like, obviously this is why we shouldn't focus so hard on what people can do for work to establish value in them and or determine their personal value, etc. Because your individual value should come at very little cost. And the ability to understand your value should be more important than determining it through your paycheck. Because doing so means that you're willing to take on things that might be hard. Because then you understand that you can do those things. You just gotta have somebody give you that chance. And by being that confident and, high self-esteem person, they're more likely to give you that chance. And that's a difficult thing for me to do. The interview is the test. If I can get the interview, 9 times out of 10, I'm getting the job. Because I know how to play the test. I know how to talk to the people. But my resume looks like shit. There's no way for me to make it look good. Because it doesn't look good. I mean, 10 years ago, I quit a job where I was effectively security guard / manager. Not really a manager, but kind of a manager, because I was managing the property in its own little way. But on the security side of things. I was the only security guard there. And then I'm homeless for a couple of years, and then I'm security in Alaska for a couple summers, and then my next job after that is seasonal at a Bevmo, and then the next job after that is 3 months at a shoe store, and the next one after that is a pizza shop, while at the same time being a board operator at a nonprofit, barely, and then the next one being a board operator at iHeartMedia. So like, there's this weird switch, obviously, but it's all low-level jobs. And It's like, who's gonna hire a 4-year-old dude who's had all these low-level jobs and then gonna pay him well enough to be able to live on his own? Who knows? So yeah. Weather's kind of weird. Yeah, and when I went to, it's weird too because like I had this goal in mind when I went to PCC when I first started, that I wanted to get back into earth sciences. You know, geology. I took an oceanography class. I loved it. Really enjoyed it. It feels like there's so much to do and so little time to do it in. And I don't mean just life in general, but like I've always been in a position where the next couple of months are so uncertain. And so I make so few plans, long-term plans, because I don't have that long-term certainty. You know, paying $1,500 a month at this place isn't viable. And trying to find a place for cheap is pretty much non-existent now. So it's like, well, what are my options? You know? I don't know what they are. Because maybe I would go back to school and I would, maybe start taking some more geology classes. I don't fucking know. Some more earth sciences class. Environmental science was not something I liked though. Because it was more about like, and I'm not against obviously the idea, but it was more about like how to save the earth kind of thing. And it was less about understanding. In a way, it was kind of like the sort of the political side of science, if you will. That's what it felt like anyway. Plus the scheduling was so weird because like the class, the lecture itself was like a 3.5-hour class at like in the evening. But then we had to do these morning field trips on Fridays. I'm like, the fuck? So like on Monday and Wednesday, it was this late evening class, but then on Friday morning you had to do the thing, and I'm like, no, that's dumb. Like, who does that? You should have it scheduled where it's similar. Either have the class in the morning and the field trips, or have the class in the evening and have the field trips at the same time. Either way. I don't know. But no, originally I was like, I want to kind of focus on earth sciences, and I want to get an AA in that, and then I want to move over to Caltech. But that's over with too, so. I don't know. I don't know where my strengths lie. I don't know if I'll ever even figure that out. And I don't know what else to say, so have fun.